Okay. What we're seeing right now, we're not going to be dealing with color until 1, 2, 3, 4, into the fifth idea, right? So, and if you're over here and you can't see this, be sure to position yourself, because if you can't see this, you're not going to get anything out of it. We're going to work in black and white because all of these first issues show up a little better in black and white. What we have up on the screen right now is the way the room looks if we don't light it. Okay? Okay. Right? So we've got these really heavy shadows around his eyes because of this really sharp kind of overhead light. I wouldn't call it flattering, right? It looks a little like Godfather, Marlon Brando lighting. It's always valuable, I think, to look at what you have before you start messing with it. Well, that doesn't do much for us, does it? Right? So it looks like if we're going to make something work in this room, we're going to need to light it. All right, let's talk first about intensity. We are going to be using basically two kinds of light. You could say three. One kind of light is incandescent light. Incandescent light is like an old style bulb you'd put in your desk lamp, right? It's a globe with a vacuum, sometimes with gas. There's a piece of metal inside there that gets excited by electricity, and it glows, and it generates heat, and it generates light. Anybody know what the original material was that was used for that little piece of metal that gets heated and becomes brighter and hotter? What mineral it was?
Tungsten?
No. Tungsten. Right? So we refer, when we get to color temperature, we talk about two general areas of color temperature, tungsten and daylight. We call it tungsten because that's what incandescent lights used, I think still used largely, although some have been outlawed, to create this light and this heat. That heat thing is going to be very important. Okay? So this kit right here is incandescent lights. Little lamps with a little bit of gas in them and a piece of metal that gets electrified, and it glows and it gets really hot. Okay? That's what lights were for 100 years for motion pictures. We're also going to be dealing with LED lights, light emitting diodes. We have some of those in here right now. These flat panel lights, where you can see all of these different little light emitting diodes in there. Right? Less electricity, less heat. Generally speaking, until the last few years, though, nowhere near as bright or consistent in terms of color as those lights were. They've caught up, largely. We're also just looked at fluorescent lights. Right? These tubes that, again, have an excitable gas inside them that gets heated, that gets electrified and glows. For a long time, the only alternative to these incandescent lights were banks of fluorescent lights, which were known as kinoflows. And they were very popular because they were cool. Right? One of the things that happens with these incandescent lights is not only do they get hot, the room gets hot, the subject gets hot. If you're doing an interview with somebody, you want to be comfortable, pointing one of these lights at them for 20 minutes is going to, I mean, if you put it too close, it'll set them on fire. You think I'm kidding about that. We'll demonstrate that on you. All right, so we have three lights in here. We got a big one and two little ones. Pardon me for using this technical jargon. Now we can't see the actual lamp because it is behind a lens. Anybody know what this lens is called?
Fresnel.
It is called a Fresnel. Why is it called a Fresnel, do you think? It's called a Fresnel because the guy who invented its name was?
Fresnel.
Fresnel. Anybody know why they invented this? This lens with all these inset circles. What this was for?
help to shape the spotlight?
No,
Is it because the glass would break?
no. Lighthouses. These were invented for lighthouses because they amplify the light. The light comes out, it bounces around in all those circles, and it gets brighter. We had an LED light set up outside that window once, and we put a Fresnel on it, and it was 2 stops brighter with the Fresnel than without it. That means we doubled the light and doubled it again just by putting this lens on it. And we've got Fresnel lenses you can check out that go with some of our lights. Now, on the side of this light, what does that say? 650. And what else? ARRI. So ARRI is the manufacturer. What do we think 650 means?
The voltage, how many watts?
Lumens is an interesting guess, but no. It is, in fact, the wattage of the light, right? So for, again, decades, if not centuries, we have basically defined lights, whether it's your desk lamp, whether it's something Thomas Edison is using in his laboratory, whether it's one of these, we have defined them by their wattage. The higher the wattage, the brighter the light is. That is no longer true with LEDs, although we do have a tendency to put numbers on LEDs that equate to this kind of brightness of this wattage. If you go into Home Depot and buy an LED lamp for your bulb for your desk lamp, it will say it's the equivalent of a 100-watt bulb. Because we know what a 100-watt bulb looks like. All right. Now, if we look at one of these smaller ones, reach for it. Whoops. Oh, we could look at the. I thought we could look at the hospital, but no, we can't. Why is that? You love picking up equipment that just opens up on its own. Love it. Okay. This is smaller, right? And this one says
150.
150. Still an ARRI, still the same manufacturer. What do we think 150 means?
Less wattage.
Okay, it means wattage. It means less wattage, which means
Not as bright.
it's not as bright. Okay? So one of the things when we're dealing with intensity, one of the things we want to focus on first is how bright a light do we think we need? Are we trying to light up a whole room or just lighting up a single subject? Are we outside at night trying to light a field? Or are we just lighting a single flower beside a lake? Right? So when you go into equipment, you start looking at lights. You look at the ones we're going to be using next week, the apertures, and you see, well, there's some that say 120D and there's some that say 300D. Well, guess what? The 300 is brighter than the 120. And the 600, which we don't have, is brighter than the 300. And the 1200, which we don't have, is brighter than the 600. Right? So that first determination is about how bright a light do I need. Your next determination will be how bright do I want the light to look. And to get into that, we need to set up a light. Who wants to set up a light stand?
You're doing this for us. Never mind, go on. You're doing this for us, I'll leave this.
Blah, 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 blah.
You're doing this for us, I'll leave. Don't need to be here for this, or?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm just getting some more.
This is perfect. Oh yeah, did we get sandbags?
Oh, we did. They're
Right
right
behind you.
No. Duh. I asked before I look. All right, that's fine. All right, who wants to set up a light stand? Come on over, Jay. Set up a light stand.
You do. You know.
So these area kits come with light stands. You always got to check when you check out a light kit and see if the light stands are with the kit because they often aren't. You have to get those separately. We could use C-stands, which we'll look at in a few minutes, but let's just use a regular light stand. Okay. So the bottom one you don't loosen.
You don't listen to mine.
You don't loosen. Okay, gotcha. So loosen the one at the top, and then you should be able to pull the legs apart. There we go.
Gotcha.
All right. Okay. How did you decide to lock that down in that position?
So that it's like more stable.
What makes it more stable?
It's like it counterweights against itself.
Yeah, you're like 2 steps ahead of me.
Sorry.
You make the legs as far apart as you can. Right? The farther apart the legs are, the steadier they are. If you do this, it's not even sitting on the floor, much less, right? By the same token, if you do this, you're just begging for trouble. So what you want to do is just kind of sit down and make sure they're as far apart as they can be. Okay, now, that's how you set up a light stand, by the way. Not so hard, right? Now, every light stand, more than likely, I don't ever say every anything, especially here, is going to have this kind of connection on the top. Those lights don't, but we'll see how that works before. So let's put a light on the light stand. Let's go with the 650.
Okay.
All right. So on the bottom of the light there is a connector that will fit very nicely over this. All right. So let's slide that on it.
Oh.
You just allow stuff to hit the floor. Yeah. Yeah. Oh wait, there's no
screw on this.
there's no screw on that. Is it? You just said that, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I just said it was
Let me see if I can take one off the other.
That's our first note of the day.
Heard.
Yeah. There's no screw tightener on the 650. All right. So here we go. So if things are correct, that should already be in it. You have to make absolutely certain this goes all the way down.
Okay, there we go.
Very good. Okay. Because one of the things that can happen, and let me show you the wrong way to do this.
Do we keep it loose?
Yeah. Okay. If this is tightened in like this, and you put it down, it's hitting the screw and it's not going all the way in. So loosen that up for me, Jake, and you will see it will eventually, boom. That's when it's all the way in. That screw should go into,
Gotcha.
that screw should go into this area, this indentation, right? So that it will be as stable as it can be. It'll be locked in as it can be. Now, before we do anything else with this light, what do you guys think is the next step?
Turn it on and point it directly at the chase.
Plug it in. That's what I was thinking.
Sandbag. So somebody bring over a sandbag. Let's look at sandbagging. I do believe that might mean something else.
At some point, you gotta get there.
At some point, you do have to do that.
Yeah, at some point, you do gotta do that.
Okay. Now, you want to make, look, in any circumstance, who is on camera is always more important than anyone who is off camera. It's the way it is, right? You don't want the light to have any chance of tilting that way, okay? So you want one leg pointed towards the subject, okay? You want the sandbag, very good job by the way, to have its weight on this side, so that it even more cannot fall that way. And you want, if you can figure out how to do it, to make sure the sandbag is not touching the floor. If the sandbag is touching the floor, it's not actually, you're not using the whole sandbag. It's not doing its entire job. And I know I'm teaching lighting now because I'm starting to sweat. Okay. All right. The next thing would be to power this up. Let's see if we've got power in here. Now, hopefully this light is not turned on.
Just look directly at the light. You can tell if it's turned on or not. It should be on.
Okay, good. Let's see if we've got some power there. We usually do.
Possibly striking.
Okay, now, watch yourself because I'm going to strike this. Whenever you turn a light on, you say strike it. You say that just to warn people so they don't look at the light or they don't think something exploded or they don't have a heart attack, right? Because this is pretty bright. So, striking. Okay. I have picked a particularly bright light. Okay? I'm going to take it up just a little bit. Now remember, whenever you're raising a stand, you start at the top. right? And then you go to the next one down. That way, it's never out of your reach. This could get so high that I can't reach it and adjust it, right? So we'll just bring this up just a little bit here. Now, if I want to touch this light, it is probably already so hot that if I touch it, all of my hand will not come back. These lights get massively, dangerously hot. All right? We have these gloves in equipment checkout. When you check out these kinds of incandescent lamps, you check out these gloves. Because if I want to get up here and just tilt this down a little bit, make sure we got full light, I want to have gloves. What's this?
Barn doors.
What's a barn door?
They can direct your light to be more
Yes,
precise.
and actually that's the other word for that is shape, which we'll get into next week. So on these lights, there is, well, there's already something on this. What is this? Hold on. That is probably already pretty hot. All right. Let me bring it down a little bit so you can see this. On the top of the light, there's a spring-loaded clamp right here, right? This is going to be different. When we get out LEDs next week, you're going to see it's an entirely different way to connect a barn door. So in this case, you take the barn door and you insert it into these areas here, okay? Then you spin this thing around and clamp it in, and now it's connected, right? And the barn doors will help us keep the light should be able to spin it, but that hold on. Something slightly that's what's off right there. Okay. Hold on, give me a sec. It's not quite on where it's supposed to be. There we go. That's it. No, I can't do that. Come on, there we go. Okay, now we're locked in. Okay, so we'll take it back up. Okay, now see if I can take the light off of a few people here. See if we can give Jake a little bit of help. Bring it up there. Bring these in. Just kind of focus it. All right, there we go. Now, I've picked a really bright light, but that's not the only thing that's going to impact the intensity. What's going to impact the intensity is also going to be the exposure. It's going to be the distance. If I move the light further away, it gets dimmer. If I, in fact, can you get me the dimmer? And can I get somebody just wants to play around, somebody get on that light for me. The more you get your hands on stuff, the more you learn, guys. The more you sit on your hands, the less you learn. All right, can somebody turn that off for me, please? So this is a dimmer. All this does is controls, no, it's on the cord. I'm sorry, that switch is on the cord. That's a good guess, though. And it will be there on some other lights. This just controls the amount of electricity going to the light. It just turns the electricity down. So if I plug this in to the power outlet and plug the light into the dimmer, you'll go ahead and strike it again.
Striking.
I can control, I can't control, what? It can't be that this one's broken.
Does that always come with the kit?
It doesn't come with a kit, these are separate.
I was gonna say, I never seen this.
Yeah, this one's doing nothing. Hey Nathan, we're gonna need to get another one. Sorry.
All good.
It looks like it might be off its track. Let me see if we can fix that.
Yeah, but should I say first before you start?
Now you can leave
You doing good
it.
stuff?
Okay, well, we'll demonstrate that in just a minute. Actually, yeah, turn it off for me. Let me just unplug this for now.
That's right.
Okay. Again, if I move the light further away, it gets dimmer. If I move it closer, it gets brighter. But the other thing that we need to control, and could we get the overhead lights turned off, please? Let's turn this light on.
Here.
Yeah.
Right here.
We can control it with exposure. This is a light meter. Let me power this up. And as you would suspect, so I have to do an adjustment on the camera. Give me 1 second. Okay. What this is a little calculator. It will read the amount of light. It can either be the light that's coming from the light, or it can be the light that's reflecting off the subject. Most of the time, we like to read coming off the light. So this little white globe. See where the sensor is there? See the sensor right there? Right in there? Right there? That's the sensor that reads the light, right? If we're going to read the light coming from the light, we put this little white dome over top of it, okay? Now what happens is, well, and these are like the worst possible, the worst possible light meters. I can't stand these. Hold on, let me get it into the right setting. Right, we got the right ISO. Mode. Okay. I tell it what my ISO is. I tell it what my shutter speed is. I think that's the other thing. I gotta set the shutter speed on this. Hold on. Where is that? Jake. Just give me a second. I'm in the middle. I'm into something else now. Where's the shutter speed on this one?
Hit him in the face.
No, you didn't use the chair.
You threw it like 3 feet above.
It did hit him in the face. That's my goal.
Okay, here we go. I also have to change the shutter speed here because it won't measure at 48. Okay. So, we'll see if this is working today. If I tell it I'm shooting at 1/60th of a second, and I tell it that I'm shooting at ISO of 800, I point it at the light, and I push the button on the side. It tells me that I should be at an f5 or a t 5.6. So a 5.6 is right there. That looks like a pretty good exposure on him. Our background's very dark right now, but that's a good exposure on him. Now, if I can control intensity once again with this, because if I want it to be brighter, let's say you're in a spaceship hurtling into the sun, right? I can do that. If I want it to be darker, you've just stumbled into a mysterious complex, and there are a lot of rabbits bouncing around, and people have been eating the rabbits, and they're living in these subterranean. Anybody know what I'm doing?
Yes.
Right? I can make it dimmer by exposure. So, intensity. It's a matter of how bright is the light, the unit itself. It's a matter of how far the light is from your subject. It's a matter of how much power you're giving to the light, which we're going to look at in just a second. And it's a matter of exposure. Now, if for some reason, let's say I don't want to shoot at 5.6 because I don't have any shallow focus. Well, I've got ND on that camera. We can always play around with that. But we also have these scrims. They're just wire mesh. It's just like your screen door, right? It doesn't really have any effect on the light except A little hard to see. Oh, we can leave it there for now. It should go all the way down. I just can't see the.
I think it's too big for instance, the barn door.
It may be too big. Hold on. Yeah, we'll just do this for the time being. It'll have the same effect.
What if I see you both in your chest?
No, that's not gonna work. Let me go back just halfway through here. That'll do enough. Okay. They come in different sizes and sometimes they fit and sometimes they don't. With that in there,
Yeah.
it's covering the whole light.
Yeah.
With that in there, I'm at 4.5. So that just took a stop of light off, right? So I can also control the brightness by, basically by putting something in there that blocks part of the light, okay? So there are all sorts of different ways to both control the intensity and control how bright the light actually looks. Okay, let's just go back to the dimmer real quick. Hopefully we've got one that works now. Is this the new one, Nathan?
I'm sorry?
Is this the new one?
The orange one. Should be on the ground.
Is there one? Okay. I see orange. Oh, there's orange. Okay. All right, can we turn it off?
The hat help shade?
Hmm?
No, big.
Okay, so now we plug the light into the dimmer. And I, of course, have been looking into the light. Now I can't see anything. Okay, let's turn the light back on.
Striking.
Okay. Right, so I can control, now this doesn't work with LEDs. LEDs will have their own built-in dimmers in most of them. This only works with an incandescent wattage style light. But I can control the brightness by controlling the amount of electricity that's going in. Now, one of the things that is happening that you can't see right now is as I turn the electricity down, the light gets more and more orange. So you have to compensate for that if you're using a dimmer like this, which is why most people would prefer to use a scrim or something like that mesh. Okay, questions? That actually does one. That's one off the list. Okay, now, I noticed the C-stands are already set up. We don't like that.
They brought them like that, man.
Okay, all right. I'm going to collapse one. Who wants to set one up? Who wants to learn how to set up a C-stand? Sure. You don't have to know. Just come on in. You're doing everything. You always do everything. So, no, come on. Come on.
I don't know how to do it.
You don't?
No.
Well, you can watch her and learn. Okay, now okay. Laws. Laws. Not rules, laws. The plate stays with the tripod. That's number one. Burn it into your memory. Number two, if you loosen it, tighten it. Because no one had tightened this, and it was spinning around and hitting my hands. Don't do that. Okay, now we've got two different types of C-stands. You've got the good one. All right? Do you have any idea? All right. No, that's good. On these, right, these are the newer good ones. They're a little heavier as well. There is down here, see this ring right here? And what does that say?
Pull
Up to unlock. Okay, so
pull up to unlock.
pull it up, see what happens. Hold it up. Right, they all go right into, if you spin a little bit, they all go right into place, and then that locks them in. You want the legs to be equidistant from each other, and there'll be something on every C-stand that will allow you to do that. In these, it's just pulling that ring up and putting it down. On these others, you're lucky you got this one. Okay, now, here's the advantage of a C-stand. We can take this off, and it's just a nice heavy-duty light stand. There's that pin that we saw on the other light stand, right where you put the light. Poor Jake. And then it telescopes up just like the light stand does. This, however, when it's put on, so loosen that. Other way. Right, sorry. See? Okay, yep. Now we can spin it out. Okay? Now tighten it down. Now we can have things that go out from the main stand here, right? So you can put a light out here. We're going to see next week that sometimes you want a light behind a subject, but you don't want the stand behind the subject because you'll see it. Or you can offset it this way. You can use these to put up flags. We're going to look at flags next week. And you can just use it for almost anything. So what we're going to use it for today, Nathan, would you do me a favor?
Yes.
I think the unbleached muslin is in that tub. Do you remember that, the fabric?
This one?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And could you get me out 2 or 3 clothespins? Now, if you're a pompous ass, you don't call these clothespins, you call them C47s. Even if you're a pompous ass like me, you may decide that's just a step too far. I'm not calling them that. Okay, they are clothespins. Can you put one? Yeah.
Is that gonna go on?
I may have to change your grade. Okay. Yeah, it will. It will just pop down. It'll pop down. There you
There
go.
we go.
Okay, I'll put one here.
Okay.
Just a lid, it's fine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not really using this for lighting per se today. So the other thing you can do is you loosen it there, right? Yeah, lefty-loosey. You can just go straight up with it, right? We could go all the way to the ceiling. Let's just go to there for now. Tighten that down. Okay, what else do you think this probably needs? What does the light need? A sandbag. We don't want it turning over either. Now you'll notice it's got 3 legs and one is higher than the other, right? You want the highest leg to be pointed towards your subject. I'm coming right towards you. What we're going to do is set this up behind him so that we're getting his shadow. We want to see his shadow. So I may be coming right into you guys. Sorry. Let's see. Where is he? He is right there. Okay. All right. Actually, you want that leg. I'm sorry. You want that leg, that higher leg, under the weight. Right. So we'll turn it this way. Now, some grips say put it on the high leg. Some grips say putting on the back legs. I picked the wrong leg. Hold on. Hold on. Couldn't see. Watch out. It's coming your way. All right. Now we're over the higher leg. Now the higher leg is out where it belongs. And I would say we're just going to follow the conventional wisdom and put the sandbag over the higher leg. Okay. Now, you also want, if you've got weight out here, and this is not enough weight to really worry about, but if you've got weight out here, you want the weight to be tightening this bolt, not loosening it, right? So when it's out here, as it pulls, it's turning the bolt to the right, which means it's tightening it. If it was out there, it'd be turning the bolt to the left, which means it's loosening it, so you don't want to do that. All right, now let me reposition the light a bit so that we get this shadow I want to get. Actually, I just need the stand, but that's very good, thank you. Where is it? Oh, maybe over here. Watch your feet. Okay. Okay, that's what we need. All right. When we're talking, let's go back. We were at 5.6, so let's put it back on. 5.6. Make sure we're in good focus. Okay. I mentioned to you before about quality of light. You know, I think maybe move this over here a bit. That might help. Okay. Quality of light. Soft light versus hard light. Hard light is when the shadows, the edges of the shadows are very distinct. So let's look at his nose. See how sharp and crisp the edge of that shadow is. Look at his shadow on the fabric. See how sharp it is. If I go over here and do this, you can count that there are 2 or 3, right? Very, very distinct. That's the definition of hard light. Do you know what it is that causes hard light? Why is this light hard light, do you think?
How bright it is?
Huh?
How bright it is?
Say it again?
How bright it is?
No, it has nothing to do with light.
What do you mean you say it 3 times?
Because I couldn't hear you. I've got, Plus it's fun. Anybody? It's the size of the light. The smaller the light, the harder the shadows are going to be, the harder the light is going to be. Some of the hardest light we get is the sun. Go out on a sunny day, look down at your shadow, it's incredibly distinct. Now the sun is really big if you're close to it, but it's so far away, it's a small light, a very, very distinct shadow. All right. If we want to soften the light, if we want to make those shadows, the edges of them get softer and softer and softer, which we consider to be a more flattering light for a subject. This has a really dramatic kind of sense going on with it. Of course, it's also very dark. The shadows are very dark. We haven't filled the shadows in yet. Conventional wisdom, and this will be the first, I'll need some more clothespins. Conventional wisdom, and I'm about to blow this conventional wisdom for you because it's a bunch of nonsense, is that you go somewhere, checkout for example, and you get a diffusion kit. Right? The idea is that you want to diffuse the light in order to make it softer. So these particular kits are designed to go with incandescent lights. They will stand the heat. You can't put everything up against these lights without it setting things on fire. Now what you're doing is you're taking a light, let's say we're looking at the lens. You're taking a light that's probably 6 inches by 6 inches. And you're going to turn it by putting this on the front of it into a light that is hopefully 12 inches by 12 inches. You're making the light bigger. If you make it bigger, it should get softer. Could somebody who feels like they can ride the exposure for me, because every time we do, you want to ride the exposure on the camera? Just open it and close it as we need to? You don't want to.
Stand over here.
I'm sorry, well you want to stay there? Who wants to get on the camera and just ride the exposure for me so we keep a constant exposure and I don't have to keep walking over
It's
there?
like
You're
turned
sitting
up.
right there, yeah. Yeah, so just leave it where it is for now. What's it on, like 5.6? Can you see it?
I think it's on 11 right now.
Ooh,
Yeah. Is it? This is the line, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's 11.
Ooh. Let's go ahead. What does 5.6 look like? Doesn't look like much when I'm in front of it. Okay. I changed some of the settings, so let's leave it like there for now. Okay. All right. So we're going to take this piece of 12 by 12 diffusion. I might just be able to do this with one. And we're going, yep, just one, it's on it. We're going to put it right there. We're turning it from 6 by 6 light to a 12 by 12 light. That's going to require us to open up the exposure probably about a stop.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going. Keep going. All right, we lost focus too. There we go. All right. Look at the shadow of his nose. Does it look substantially different? No, doesn't look different at all. Now, the shadow we're casting behind him has lost a little bit of detail, right? It's still pretty distinct. These little sheets have very little effect on softening the light. They do have the effect of taking at least a stop out of your light and making it darker. And I will see people who will basically keep layering these on, more and more of them, thinking that the more you put on, the softer the light will get. It won't get softer, it'll just get dimmer. The only way the light gets softer is when it gets bigger. So let's make it bigger. Who wants to do the second C-stand? Let me collapse it. And then collapsing it, I'll probably show you how to. That should be on. These are the bad ones. There we go. All right, so you're going to get it. It's going to be like this. Okay. Now, one of the tricks that sometimes works, and sometimes, by the way, notice I'm holding it like this. My fingers are around the pole. You don't want to hold it like this, because if I hand it off to somebody and they grab it here, that's it for my fingers. All right, so it's always better to hold it here. So you might be able to loosen it up and just start to spin it. Right? Okay. And they may lock into place, or they may just spin around and do nothing, right? So now we've got to get down here. See these indentations? So we want to turn this until we get that indentation, right? And can you help me push it in? There we go. See how it locked in there? So you've got these little indentations. You want to lock those in. Okay, so find that one, okay? Now it's all locked in. They're equidistant, it looks like, I think. Tighten it up and let's see. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. If you loosen it, tighten it. What's loose on this? That's loose. That's loose. There's loose. Okay. What we're going to do with this one is, would you get Nathan to hand you what's called a sickle? We're also going to need a sandbag. Who wants to get a sandbag for us? All right. The diffusion is coming off. You can leave the exposure where it is because we're getting ready to dim it. Okay, this is where this arm, very good, is going to come into play. I think I'm on the wrong side. Yeah, I'm on the wrong side. Sorry. Yeah. So that's going to tighten it. Okay, so we're on the right side. The weight's going to tighten it as it goes. So we want to be on that side, except like this to be out. Okay, so if you can see this on the end here, there are these series of holes, right? And they're designed for this pin. See these holes? So we're going to, let me spin this around. I'm on the wrong side. All right. Okay. So that pin needs to go into this small hole and out that one, which means you're kind of going under the center. All right. Bingo. Then we tighten it. Before I tighten it, though, spin it like that so that this part's on the bottom. There you go. All right, let's get it level. Let me tighten it. All right. This is a silk. We're going to turn what was the 6-inch by 6-inch light into what is, I think, like a 36 by 24 light. So we're going to make it substantially larger. We're going to do that by putting it between the light and our subject and putting it far enough away that we kind of fill up. Bring this up just a little bit. We kind of fill that silk up with light. Okay? Now, look at the shadow on his nose. It is a little softer. Look at the shadow on the background. It is a little softer. Now, this is something that's going to be a bit deceptive. By putting this silk on this light stand and spreading this light out, we're spreading light all over the room. And it's bouncing back in. So not only are the shadows softer, they're also brighter. This has nothing to do with how bright or how dark the shadows is. It only has to do with what this edge or that edge looks like. Okay? Would you agree that that does appear softer? Okay? It's not that soft. Nathan? Shower curtain lining.
Is it in?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Let's make it even bigger. No, it's white. There it is back there. Isn't it? That's it. All right, I've got one. I need one more. No, one more close in. Sorry. Didn't get my thought finished.
I got you.
Okay. So we're going to actually bring two because I don't know what to do with the other. Huh?
On your shirt.
That's, of course it is. That's where you're supposed to put them. All right, hold this for a second. So we're going to take this out. We don't need this.
I mean, it is a close thing.
Yeah. Oh, you'll see. One of the things you see, and I hate to bring this up, people like to sneak around and put these on the backs of people's shirts so they don't know it. They just, you end up like, you know, like 15 of those on your back before it's all over with. But also just hanging them off your clothes is a good way to hold on to them. So we're going to spin this around. We don't need this bolt. We really only need, and we're going to hang this up very much like we hung up that piece of cloth. So, let's put those weights at the bottom. Zoom in. Now, this is not a piece of film equipment, although I've used this probably more than I've used anything else. This is a shower curtain lining. This is $5.99 at Walmart. Okay? But it is a translucent piece of material. The light will pass through it, right? And if we can get it a little closer to the subject, the further away we get it from the light, I might move the light, the larger the light source is. So if I move the light back a little bit, we're basically now turning that 6 by 6 inch light into, I don't know, 5 by 4, 4 by 3, a really, really big source. Now, look at the shadows. If you can't see them through this, you should come around. You guys are getting nothing out of this, literally nothing. Look at the shadow on his nose. Look at the shadow on the back. Much, much softer. And this other shadow, the one that's caused by just his cheek kind of rounding around, is also getting much softer. The only way to create the softer light is to make the light source substantially bigger. We've got a 6 foot by 6 foot frame and silk in checkout. It's not in great shape and it's a lot of work to set it up. I'd be glad to loan you one of my many shower curtain linings if you need it for any of your lighting exercises. Now, one thing you do have to be careful about something like this is how close you get it to the light, because this light is blindingly hot right now, right? And it would melt that if it was too close. You don't have to worry about that with an LED. All right? So, let's do this though. Let's just emphasize the shadows a bit more. Let's bring it around here. Ooh, look, now we'll get, see, there's what the shadow, oh, you can't see it from there. Never mind. All right, let's put it back here. Take it up a little bit. Can't come much further than that. So, lock that image in your head for a minute. Okay? Lock the way he looks, lock the way his face looks, lock the way it feels. Okay? And now, if you will change the exposure as I do this for me, I'm going to move this out, so you're going to have to close it down.
Yeah.
Compare that to that. It's different, right? It's a different feeling, right? This is going to emphasize every little crack and crevice, every little imperfection in the skin. The softer light is going to smooth everyone's skin kind of out. So that's one of the reasons why we think of that light as being a bit more flat. Okay? So, intensity. How bright is the light? How bright do you want the light to look? Quality. How hard are the shadows? Or how soft are the shadows? Okay, that's 2 out of the 3 we're going to do for today. Now we're going to contrast. Okay. For contrast, I'm going to fly this out. I don't think I need this right now. Let me take it down because it's blocking half of you from being able to see what's going on. And I'm going to move the light a little bit around here. We can also get and should, I don't know. Actually, maybe I can take advantage of that. I can take advantage of that. No, let's get some hands up there and just see if we can get rid. And maybe you can help with this, Nathan. Let's just get rid of that C-stand and that unbleached muzzle.
You got it.
All right. Let's set up a fairly standard lighting setup.
Nice little script.
Anybody know what this lighting setup is called? It is Rembrandt lighting. Rembrandt lighting is defined by positioning the light in such a way there's that triangle. And of course, every time you move your head, it's a different lighting setup. We're going to get into that next week. But if you can move your head enough to close off that shadow right there, so it's a triangle other way. Right? A little less. Right there. That little triangle under his eye on that side. Right? That's what defines Rembrandt lighting. We're going to see next week that there's a definition for put the light here, and here, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there. One of the things I will go ahead and point out so you can be thinking about this is that everything we're doing today is short-sighted lighting. As he is looking at himself, right up here, he's looking off the camera, right? We are seeing more of this side of his face. In fact, exaggerate that for me a little bit. Look a little more that way. Not that much, just a little bit. Yeah, like that. We're seeing more. Wait a second, did I just mess that up? I did. Just look back at yourself. The way things are backwards are always confusing. Yeah, like that, right? We're seeing more of this side of his face and less of this. This is the broad side, and this is the short side. Our key light, our main light, is lighting the short side of his face, the side of his face that's away from the camera. That might be a little counterintuitive, but 90% of every light setup you will see on a human being will be short-sighted lighting. Start looking for it, you will see it. The broader side of his face is the side that has the shadows. It therefore emphasizes the shadows, and the shadows have a lot of impact. The shadows create a sense of depth, for example. Okay. Now, where did I put the? Well, it's always the light meter. It's always the light meter. Anybody know where did I put it?
It's clipped to your shirt. I'm just kidding.
No.
Is it in the-
It should be. It should be around my neck.
there?
Where is it? That's it. Okay. Thank you. That's like the equivalent of old people driving too slow. Right now, it's our flashlights are on. Okay. All right. So we're going to take a light reading from this side of the face. Well, let me say this first. I think you've all gotten this before, but let me make sure that you know this, right? 3-point lighting. Okay? A lot of our definitions are based on 3-point lighting. There's nothing magic about 3-point lighting. 2-point lighting is just as interesting. 4-point lighting is just as interesting. Sometimes 20-point lighting, sometimes 1-point lighting, sometimes no-point lighting. But we define things by 3-point lighting. 3-point lighting means we have a main light that we are basing our exposure on, and that is our key light. We have a secondary light that is called the fill light because it is there to make the shadows brighter. And we have a third light that is referred to as a backlight because it lights the back of the subject. We'll be getting into all of that more next week. But we are going to talk about key and fill right now as we talk about contrast. So Would you set that to 8, F8? Okay. This side of his face right now is at F8. So if we set our exposure based to this key light, there is our proper exposure. The shadow side of his face is a 1.0. You can't even open it up bright enough to do that, so let's just leave it at 8 for now. So what we're going to be doing is looking at how different it looks or feels depending on how bright or how dark, how high the contrast ratio is. Right now, it's a very high contrast ratio. The difference between the bright side and the dark side is, I think it's 8 stops. Right? I think it's something like 8 stops. So that's a lot, right? There's essentially no light on the other side of his face. We're getting a little bit of light that's bouncing on, light goes everywhere and comes back. There's some of it bouncing off the wall, bouncing off the screen, so we're getting a little bit of light coming back. Okay? Now, let's say you're shooting out in the sunlight, and it looks like this. Okay? You got one side of the face really, really bright, and the other side just seems really, really dark. Okay? If you've got your shower curtain in your car, shower curtain light, you can use that. If you go to the dollar store and you pick up some pieces of foam core, you can use this. If I want the other side of his face to not be as dark, all I have to do is walk in something that will reflect the light back in. And I can change what he looks like from that to that. Right? So what we're doing now is we're throwing light back. How close can I get before I get in the frame? We're throwing light back into the fill side of his face, and we're creating a lower contrast ratio. Right? Big dark contrast ratio is very dramatic, very film noir, very horror movie, right? More interview setup, romantic comedy. I mean, the background is still really dark, so that's kind of throwing it off. But we can see how much different we can make that. So let's do some measurements. Let's actually set a light up to be doing that. So who wants to set up a light stand? Who's going to do it? Who hasn't done a light stand? Go grab one out of there. Whoever wants to do it. Oh, go. Go. We are probably going to set it up about in here. So you might want to just closer we can get it to the table. Oh, good. Okay. Bring it over here. Let's set it up right here for now. Be sure it's tight. That's good. Now, we're going to be using these Amarans. Now we're moving into LEDs. Okay? And these are a little complicated. They're complicated not in terms of the light themselves. They're complicated in how you have to attach them to a light stand, which is the most screwy, it's the worst thing Aperture has ever done, is whatever this setup is supposed to be. So, let's see, where are the pins? You have to pick one. Yeah, I see one. Okay, so the first thing you have to do, I gotta get this out of the way. All right, you got it? All right. These that have holes in them are not the best, but that's what we got. So the first thing you have to do is put a pin. And one of the things you'll find out is sometimes they tighten up and sometimes they don't. And if they don't tighten up, you can't really use them. But that one tightened up nicely, okay? Then you've got one of these screwy things. And this goes on the light stand, just like the bottom of that Airy did. You keep going till it falls all the way down, then you tighten it in, right? And then that pin goes in here, and then you tighten that down. And no matter how well you do it, it's still a little wonky, all right? What else do we need on this light right now? Very good. And would you hand me one of the power cables? There. You can run these off batteries, or we can just plug them. So you want to come around here and figure out, see if you can find where you think you plug it in? That looks like the opposite. That's it right there. I didn't even remember off the top of my head, so. All right, now let's make sure it's turned off. The switch is. That's off, I think.
Is it?
All right, striking just to be safe. You tell me. You put it where you think it needs to be. I thought up was on, but. Okay, striking maybe? Nope, she was right. Okay, now turn it on.
Striking.
Okay, this is your dimmer. Let's take it down, and there's a percentage right here. You see right now we're at 15%. I think 10 is as low as you can go, so let's take it down to 10. Okay, so let's see what we've got now. Okay, we have, in fact, all I have to do is stand here, right, and you can see what we had before. Okay, we're still at an 8 on that side. Let's see where we are on this side now. And I have to shade this from reading that light so it only reads the aperture. We went from 1.0 with that reflector way up there. This is 1.8. So we are still about, I'm going to say 6 stops difference between the two sides. So it's still a pretty dramatic contrast ratio, but we are getting a little more light. We're at 10. Mm-hmm. Let's take it to 20. Okay. Oh, I keep forgetting. Okay. 2.0. So kind of like a half a stop. Really didn't make much difference. Let's go ahead and take it up to 30. Now that's a stop, right? So from 10 to 30, take it back to 10 for a second. From this to 30, go back to 30. That's a stop difference. So maybe from 6 stops difference to 5 stops difference. I'm not doing the math very well in my head. Let's take it to 50. But also be paying attention, does this feel different? Just looking at his face, because we're not doing the background yet at all. So try not to let that influence how you're reading this, just the face. That's another stop or so, 3.2. We're at 50? Mm-hmm. 75. 4.5. So we have gone from that to this. I'm hoping you can see. Look, we still have the shadows, right? We've still got the triangle. We've still got Rembrandt lighting.
Man, I hope I can still see.
Huh?
The man, I hope I can still see.
Yeah. But there's a different sense of drama to this. There's a different sense of feeling to this. Let's take it to 100. I think that might be almost a 1-to-1 ratio. All right. If we take it up to 100, we're at a 6.3. So we're basically 1.5 stops between the side that's lit by the key light and the side that is lit by the fill light. Okay, that's as bright as the fill light will get, unless we move it closer. So let's be careful of that cable. And let's just see how much we can get. Okay. Let's see what moving it closer did. The fill light side is now 9, and the key side is 8. The fill light side just became the key light side. That's a good, everyone should bring sunglasses from now on for these labs. That's a really good idea. So if we wanted to get it maybe equal, I don't know why we'd want to do that, but if we did, just for demonstration purposes, that's it. It's an 8.0 on both sides. So we've basically filled up the fill side, we've brightened up the fill side so it's equal to the key side. That kind of pointless, kind of, in a way, I guess, maybe. You kind of want, look, the shadows create a sense of definition, a sense of space, right? The absence of shadows makes things seem flatter because we don't get a sense of distance or depth. A shadow means something is out in front of something else. A shadow means depth. Okay,